Scary telling.
I was going about my day when I received a call from my mother, who sounded frantic and terrified. She told me that she received a strange package in the mail, and when she opened it, she found an old audio cassette and a note that read, "Play me." At first, I didn't think much of it. I assumed it was just some kind of prank or a weird advertisement. But my mother's voice was shaking so much that I couldn't ignore the sense of unease that settled in my gut. I asked her what was on the tape, and she hesitated for a moment before finally telling me. She said that it was a man's voice, weak and raspy, begging for help. He kept saying, "I'm not dead, but dying. I need your help. Please, someone, anyone." I didn't know what to make of it, but I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was off. I decided to investigate further and asked my mother to send me the package. When it arrived, I felt a sense of dread as I held the cassette tape in my hands. I couldn't help but wonder who the man on the tape was and what had happened to him. I put the tape in my old cassette deck and pressed play. The sound quality was poor, but I could hear the man's voice clearly. He sounded desperate, like he was clinging to life by a thread. I listened to the tape over and over again, trying to make sense of what was happening. But the more I listened, the more confused and scared I became. I knew I had to find out who the man on the tape was and help him if I could. I started to dig deeper, searching for any clues that could lead me to him. The only thing I had to go on was the note that came with the tape. It was written in a handwriting that I didn't recognize, and it didn't offer any clues as to who the sender was. I started to ask around, hoping that someone had heard of a missing person who fit the man's description. But no one seemed to know anything. Days turned into weeks, and my obsession with finding the man on the tape grew stronger. I spent hours each day searching online, scouring news articles and social media sites for any leads. But no matter how hard I looked, I couldn't find any information that could help me. The man on the tape remained a mystery, and I began to wonder if I was going crazy. I started to experience strange dreams and hallucinations, seeing the man's face everywhere I went and hearing his voice in my mind. It was like he was haunting me, and I couldn't escape his grasp. Despite my fear and confusion, I knew that I couldn't give up. I had to find the man on the tape, no matter what it took. My search for the man on the tape led me down a dark and twisted path. I started to research different missing persons cases, hoping to find a clue that would lead me to him. One night, while scrolling through an online forum, I stumbled upon a thread discussing a disbanded cult known for their cruel and unusual practices. As I read through the posts, my heart sank. The cult sounded like the stuff of nightmares. According to the posts, the cult was known for performing grotesque rituals on their members, leaving them mutilated and barely alive. They had been disbanded years ago, but their practices still haunted the memories of those who had been a part of it. I couldn't help but wonder if the man on the tape was a victim of this cult. The more I read about them, the more I became convinced that there was a connection. I spent the next few days researching everything I could about the cult. I reached out to former members and victims, hoping to get some insight into their practices. One former member responded to my message, warning me to stay away from the cult. He told me that they were dangerous and that I should not involve myself in their affairs. But I couldn't shake off the feeling that the man on the tape was connected to the cult in some way. I knew I had to find out more. I started to visit the places where the cult used to hold their rituals. I went to abandoned buildings and old warehouses, hoping to find some kind of clue. It was during one of these visits that I stumbled upon a hidden room filled with old cassette tapes. As I picked them up one by one, I realized that they were recordings of the cult's rituals. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The screams and cries of the victims echoed through the room, and I felt sick to my stomach. I listened to the tapes for hours, trying to find any clues that could lead me to the man on the tape. And then, I heard his voice. It was faint, but it was unmistakable. The man on the tape was one of the victims of the cult, and he was still alive. My heart raced as I realized that I was getting closer to finding him. But I also knew that the cult was dangerous, and that I was putting myself in danger by pursuing this. Despite my fear, I couldn't give up. I had to find the man on the tape and save him from the horrors of the cult. As I dug deeper into the cult's practices, I found myself being consumed by the darkness that surrounded them. I spent hours each day researching, trying to find any clues that could lead me to the man on the tape. I became obsessed with finding him, and my life began to revolve around my search. I stopped going out with friends and stopped taking care of myself. All I could think about was finding the man on the tape and saving him from the cult's horrors. My dreams were filled with nightmares of the cult's rituals. I would wake up in the middle of the night, sweating and shaking, unable to shake off the feeling that something was watching me. I started to experience hallucinations during the day as well. I would see the man's face everywhere I went, and I would hear his voice in my mind, begging for help. Despite my fear and exhaustion, I couldn't give up. I knew that I was getting closer to finding the man on the tape, and that I had to keep going. I finally discovered the location of the cult's hideout. It was an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town, hidden behind a maze of winding alleys and abandoned buildings. As I approached the warehouse, I felt a sense of dread wash over me. I knew that I was putting myself in danger, but I couldn't turn back now. I crept inside the warehouse, moving silently through the shadows. The air was thick with the smell of decay, and I could hear the faint sound of chanting coming from deep within the building. As I moved deeper into the warehouse, I came across a hidden room filled with rows of mutilated bodies. They were barely clinging to life, and I knew that I had to get them out of there. But then, I heard footsteps approaching. I ducked behind a row of bodies, hiding in the shadows as two cult members entered the room. I listened as they spoke, trying to make out what they were saying. They were discussing a new ritual, one that would involve a sacrifice. My heart raced as I realized that they were planning on killing someone. I knew that I had to stop them. I crept out of the shadows, moving silently towards the cult members. But then, one of them turned around and saw me. I froze, my heart racing as I realized that I had been caught. The cult member reached for a knife, and I knew that I was in trouble. But then, the man on the tape appeared out of nowhere. He had managed to free himself from his restraints and was now standing in front of me, his eyes filled with determination. Together, we fought off the cult members and managed to escape the warehouse. As we ran through the darkened alleys, I realized that I had finally found the man on the tape and that we had both been saved from the horrors of the cult. But even as we emerged from the darkness, I knew that the darkness of the cult's practices would stay with me forever. I had gone too deep, and there was no turning back. After our narrow escape from the cult's hideout, the man on the tape and I went into hiding. We knew that the cult was dangerous, and that they would stop at nothing to get us back. As we stayed hidden, the man on the tape revealed the truth to me. He told me that he had joined the cult voluntarily, hoping to find a sense of purpose in his life. But he quickly realized that they were not what they seemed. He had been subjected to horrific rituals and had witnessed unspeakable acts of violence and cruelty. He had tried to leave the cult, but they had hunted him down and captured him. He had been trapped in the cult's clutches for months, enduring unimaginable horrors before he managed to escape and send the package to my mother. As he spoke, I could feel the weight of his words sinking in. The darkness of the cult's practices had affected him deeply, and I could see the pain and fear in his eyes. But even as we hid, I couldn't shake off the feeling that we were being watched. I knew that the cult was still out there, and that they were coming for us. One night, as we sat in our hiding place, we heard a knock on the door. My heart raced as I realized that the cult had found us. We scrambled to our feet, trying to find a place to hide. But it was too late. The door burst open, and the cult members poured in. We fought back, using everything we had to defend ourselves. But they were too many, and too powerful. As I felt the cold blade of a knife against my skin, I knew that it was over. But then, something unexpected happened. The man on the tape revealed a power that I had never seen before. His eyes glowed with an otherworldly light, and he emitted a force that pushed the cult members back. As we fled the scene, I couldn't help but wonder what had happened. The man on the tape had revealed a power that was beyond human comprehension, and I knew that there was much more to his story than I had ever imagined. As we ran through the darkened streets, I realized that we had only scratched the surface of the cult's secrets. The man on the tape had revealed a power that was beyond imagination, and I knew that we were in for much more than we had ever bargained for. As we hid from the cult, I knew that we had to confront them once and for all. The man on the tape had revealed a power that was beyond human comprehension, and I knew that we had to use it to take down the cult once and for all. We spent days preparing for the final showdown, gathering weapons and planning our attack. We knew that it was a risky move, but we had to take down the cult before they came after us again. As we approached the cult's hideout, I could feel my heart racing. We had no idea what to expect, and I knew that we were putting ourselves in grave danger. We crept inside the hideout, moving silently through the shadows. As we approached the inner sanctum of the cult, we could hear the sound of chanting and the flicker of candles. As we burst into the room, the cult members turned to face us. But the man on the tape revealed his power once again, and the cult members were thrown back by the sheer force of his energy. We fought with all our might, using every weapon we had to take down the cult members. But they were strong, and it seemed like they would never go down. Just as I was about to give up hope, the man on the tape revealed a new power. His eyes glowed with a brilliant light, and he unleashed an energy that decimated the cult members. As we emerged from the hideout, victorious, I knew that our lives would never be the same. The man on the tape had revealed a power that was beyond comprehension, and I knew that there was still so much that we didn't understand. But as we emerged into the sunlight, I also knew that we had succeeded. We had taken down the cult and put an end to their horrific practices. As we parted ways, the man on the tape disappeared into the shadows, leaving me with more questions than answers. But I also knew that I had found something that I had been searching for my entire life, the truth. As I walked away from the cult's hideout, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief wash over me. The darkness that had consumed me during my search for the man on the tape was finally lifting, and I knew that I had found a sense of closure. And as I looked up at the sky, I knew that there was so much more out there waiting to be discovered. But for now, I was content in the knowledge that I had done something good. I had taken down the cult and saved the man on the tape from a fate worse than death. As I walked away from this scene, I knew that I would never forget what I had learned. The darkness of the cult's practices had affected me deeply, but I had emerged from it stronger than ever before. And as I walked into the light, I knew that there was still so much left to discover and so much left to do.